Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Howie Hawkins, and Howie and I are going to have a discussion about Cornel West leaving the Green Party. So, Howie, were you surprised?
Not that surprised. Um, I really think it's because when he first got into the campaign, it was so casual. He was asked by Nick Brana of the People's Party, which is a Potemkin village of a party.
Uh-huh.
Um, and he said he talked to his wife and his brother, and he said, okay, he didn't have a campaign team in place, a campaign plan. And he's going to a party that doesn't have ballot access. He didn't even know he was getting into. And then, the leader of the People's Party's got all these allegations about former associates of autocratic rule, sexual harassment, financial misappropriation. And West was supposedly on the advisory board of the People's Party. He didn't know that. So I
Wow.
think this decision to go independent is as dumb as that one. He's saying it's easier to get on the ballot as an independent than as a Green Party candidate. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's lost, for example, ballot access in big states like California, Florida, Texas. Now he'll have to mount massive petition drives. He'll need over 219,000 signatures in California, which really means, close to 400,000, 145,000 signatures in Texas, 113,000, over 113,000 in Florida. And he won't have the Green Party base to collect signatures for him. It's going to cost him millions of dollars to hire petitioning firms. I mean, this is just incompetent foolishness. And it makes me think this isn't really a serious campaign, or at least, him and his advisors are naive as can be.
Who are his advisors?
Well, he just hired as his campaign manager Peter Dow,
Okay.
with I guess a social media messenger. He did a lot for the Democrats, Kerry and Clinton. In 2016, he was known for being a Clinton attack dog against Bernie Sanders. And now I saw him on an interview. He was very defensive. And, he said he'd come over to independent politics. He did endorse me late in the campaign in 2020.
Okay.
Then he was back with Marianne Williamson, being her campaign manager until, what I gather from reports is she's a hard boss. She's, and so he left that, but that was a Democrat. So he went from Democrat to Green to Democrat. But, his history over the last 20 years is he's flipped and flopped back and forth, but mostly he stayed with the Democrats. And even when he did endorse Greens, like Ralph Nader in 2000 and Jill Stein in 2016, it was after the primaries where he'd worked for Democrats. So, there was always good reason to wonder if he was going to stick, with independent politics. And certainly he doesn't have a commitment to it. He doesn't have a commitment to building a mass working class party through which the exploited and the oppressed, or the least of these, as he says, can organize and speak and act for themselves. Now it's just him out there, giving his sermons and preaching, but there's no organization. It's not organizing the least of these into an institution through which they can exercise power. So it's just a episodic campaign by an individual, not a party building campaign. And, if we're going to change things in this country, the left needs a mass party. And, the Greens have survived. I wouldn't say we're where we ought to be, but we're not where we were. And it's something you can build upon. But he's not doing that now.
So, what happened? Jill Stein was an integral part of his campaign. Where does that leave Jill right now?
Well, I don't know how integral she really was. I mean, she was interviewed by one of the podcasters, Savvy Sads, a couple of nights ago, I guess Thursday night, Friday night, kind of blurring together. But she said, Cornel didn't tell her what he was going to do. She found out about it, through social media or the news. So, I'm not sure how close she was to West's, decision making. So now she did say at the end of the interview she might run, and she also said in a tweet when Cornel went independent that she was looking for, she was talking to people that had run in the past, that run good candidates, or good campaigns, to see who might run.
Mm-hmm.
But then with Savvy Sabs, she kind of pulled the Dick Cheney. Remember, Dick Cheney was asked to find a vice presidential
Right.
candidate and picked himself.
Yep.
So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I didn't get a call from her, but I didn't expect to.
Well, when he had first announced that he was running as a Green, I had spoken to Mark Dunley, and I said, "What do you think of West's campaign?" And he said, "He's not going to go the distance with this." So Mark Dunley called it right away that it wasn't going to be a commitment to the finish line.
Yeah, well, Mark has a lot of experience, and I think that was good odds when he first made that. I think he made that a few months ago, made that prediction. Yeah, I had private communications with Cornell. I offered to, share what I've learned running and help on a couple of the issues. And we did get one issue brief with a Ukrainian socialist, which I think, Cornell learned a lot from that, but it doesn't seem to have sunk in. He's kind of sunk back into this geopolitical analysis where it's just the Russians and the Americans, or the Russians and the Western imperialists, and that just makes the Ukrainians themselves disappear. What they want, what they need, what they're fighting for. I mean, for a guy that it calls himself a Christian socialist with a PhD in moral philosophy, he can't seem to take sides in a struggle between colonizers and the colonized.
Mm-hmm.
And colonizers is not just Russia, it's also Western economic imperialism. And the Ukrainians will tell you that. And I think when we had a conversation, it went on for 2 hours. I think Cornell was, moved by what this Ukrainian guy had to say. But, then we're supposed to have a follow-up to that, a public podcast where this conversation could be witnessed by a lot of people. And we're going to do an issue briefing on ranked choice voting and proportional representation with some Greens and others who have, years and decades really of experience. And in his latest platform, he doesn't even mention ranked choice voting and proportional representation.
Mm-hmm.
Although I saw the interview he did with Savvy Sabs, maybe it was last night or the night before, he didn't even know it wasn't in his platform. And he kind of said, his wife and Peter Dow and another guy had put it together. It's like he didn't even know it was in it. So this just to me is it's just not serious. It's not, about organizing and building something. It's more just getting on the media and talking. But even there, I mean, I found this, and this was a lot of people were frustrated by. He talks in generalities, but he's asked specific questions about policy, and he kind of filibusters. And that's one thing people complain about politicians. It's like, give us a straight answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think Mark was looking at the larger structural issue. Cornell is going to be vilified by his academic and activist peers for spoiling the election. And, one of the things I said to Cornell was, look, you got an answer to that. It's ranked choice voting. And you should demand that Biden join you and get the media to ask Biden, will he support ranked choice voting in presidential elections? And that gets rid of the spoiler problem. But that's not the way Cornell's been answering that question. So, I just found generally he would say yes, but later. And then later never came, on these briefings. There's also a media request that came in June, and he's still, last time I talked to him, we exchanged emails, was about maybe 3 weeks now, or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks now. And he said, yes, but later, I'm swamped. I'll get back to you.
So his rationale was, he talked about the duopoly, okay, meaning the Democrats and Republicans. Well, the Green is a third party. The Greens are a third party, and he doesn't. It seems like he doesn't comprehend that running as a Green would kind of chip away at the duopoly, right?
Yeah, and what he said in that interview with Savvy Savs, I guess it was last night or the night before, night before, was that he didn't want to have to go through the 50 state parties to campaign for delegates for the national convention. He said that meant he couldn't spend as much time speaking directly to the people. But I think that's nonsense. I mean, you go to state party meetings, you communicate with their membership about what you're running for and why they should support you. But that doesn't stop you from talking to the people directly through the media you get. Now he's going to have trouble getting media, because if he's not on enough ballot lines to make any difference, the media is not going to care. He's just another one of, there's always lots of candidates running who don't have ballot access, and nobody pays them any attention.
So where does that leave the Green Party as of today?
Angry, disappointed, and some are, I think, naively hoping he'll come back. It's like, your boyfriend or girlfriend tells you goodbye, and no uncertain terms, and you're still hoping they'll come back.
Right.
I think some people are in that state of mind. But he was the first person to step forward who had the capacity to run a serious campaign. I mean, we have maybe half a dozen people who've expressed interest, but they haven't done anything to build a campaign. I mean, the Green Party itself has some minimal requirements to be recognized as a candidate. Like get 100 Greens to say, yeah, we want you to be a candidate. Raise $5,000. Have a plan to get on the ballot. And it's not that hard to do, but nobody's done that yet. So at this point, we don't have a candidate. Some people are talking maybe we should do none of the above in our state meetings and just not run somebody this time, because we don't have a good candidate to run. But it's still a bit early. It's starting to get late. I mean, a lot of people have been asking me to run, and I know what it takes, and I don't have the campaign team. And at this point, deadlines are starting to come up. You got to raise a lot of money. It's just not very realistic. So it is getting late. The Greens are in a tough spot when it comes to the presidential election.
Do you think Jill Stein might jump in?
Yeah, I think she might. She certainly left that door open in that interview the other night.
Oh, good.
But, she's been around a long time, and I know that too. The more you've been around, the more people develop problems with you. They carry grudges and don't like what you did this time or that time. So she has her supporters, but she has her detractors too. So we'll see. But it's it's tough. It's really late to be organizing a serious campaign.
You think that this helps Biden, because it seems like Cornel West, campaign manager, has ties to the Democratic Party. So ultimately, by him pulling out of the presidential race as a Green, does it help Biden?
Well, Peter Dow said, categorically that this is going to be a campaign to the end. Cornel said the same thing recently. And I think they're not going to drop out because, they're afraid of spoiling the election. They may drop out because they really don't have a campaign in the end. They're not on the ballot line. People are starting to ignore them. So, I think it may come to an end that way. In terms of the impact on Biden, I think people that might have voted for Cornel West might also be thinking of voting for Biden to stop Trump. I mean, that's the spoiler dilemma. Another wild card here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, probably tomorrow is going to announce he's running as an independent.
Right.
And I don't know whether he's not running as a Democrat, he's running as either small I independent like Cornel, or maybe he's going to the Libertarian Party, which he can't.
I heard no.
You heard a no?
That he is not going to run on the Libertarian Party, that he's going to go straight independent.
Okay, well, there've been some polls showing he's got, like 17% of the vote. He's taken more from the Republicans in that poll. Again, this is all early, but, he does overlap with a lot of the, right-wing Republicans on, vaccinations, on Ukraine, on support for Israel, unconditional support for Israel. So he may take more from Trump than Biden, but it's really hard to tell. And when he gets scrutinized, if he does have that kind of polling, he'll get, closely scrutinized by the media. And I think it's going to expose a lot of stuff that'll turn people off. So, but it's, it's volatile. Trump's facing all these indictments, and where will he be legally? Can he really run a campaign? Biden is old, and his longevity can't be guaranteed. I mean, between a health crisis or just passing on, that could create lead to another Democratic candidate. So it's a fluid situation. That's what I'm saying.
It's a depressing situation.
Yeah. And it's not just the Green Party, it's the whole left. We should have by now, after all the problems and disappointments that progressive people have had with the Democratic Party, have built a third party movement. And that's not built around presidential campaigns. Presidential campaigns can give voice to that, it can amplify that, but it's really got to be, we're running lots of candidates at the local level where we can win. I mean, the Greens have a high winning percentage when we run locally. We have about 140 elected officials right now. And from there, you can run credible campaigns and win at the state legislative level. And from that level, you can go to the House. And when you've got that kind of movement out there, then the presidential campaign becomes much more influential and impactful. But, the Greens have talked about doing that, but they haven't done it. And the broader left, I mean, most of the broader left has stuck with the Democrats, where they disappear. I mean, they surrender their voice. If they're for Medicare for all, but support somebody like Joe Biden who's opposed to it, what have they done? They've silenced themselves. They've disappeared the left as a real alternative. So, I think the Greens have problems, but it's their problems express a larger problem on the whole left. It's largely in the Democratic Party. And, to the extent it breaks out, it mobilizes around presidential campaigns when we could be, running and winning and having an impact in local races and build from there to state legislatures in the House. I think that's really doable. And at some point, I hope the left, figures that out instead of, doing their issue campaigns. And then when elections come around, settling for the Democrat as the lesser evil. That is a dynamic that has, American politics have moved to the right since, about 1970. The New Deal Democrats were replaced by the new corporate New Democrats. And, this neoliberal policy of deregulation, privatization, public austerity has been going on for 50 years, and economic inequality has grown. We haven't addressed the climate crisis and many other problems. The housing crisis right now is extreme. So, yeah, I agree. It's a depressing situation.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any predictions as to where all this mumbo jumbo will end up?
Well, if I had to place a bet, I'd say it'll be Biden versus Trump. Most progressive minded people are going to vote for Biden to stop Trump. And Cornel West and I don't even know if Robert Kennedy's on the left. Cornel and maybe some other very minor, races by sectarian left parties are going to be, irrelevant to the final outcome. They're going to be very marginal.
Which is detrimental, I think, to American society at large, because I think Biden is he's deteriorating before our eyes, and Trump, with all of the indictments and stuff, it's really a sorry state of affairs.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people put emphasis on Biden's age and slowing down, but he's got enough there to decide on policies. The problem is he's moving to the right to compete for those votes he thinks are in the middle between him and Trump. So, like the latest thing this week is they're going to, They're going to build a section of the border wall, which was Trump's thing.
Right.
The immigration is, as a policy, it's Trump's policy without the, racist dog whistles and scapegoating. But
Mhm.
it's the same policy. It's cruel and inhumane. And Biden doesn't have a positive answer. I mean, he's focused on stopping people who are fleeing from problems, U.S. imperialism in the global South, and particularly Central America and South America, have
Mhm.
helped cause. And, for example, when I talk about a eco-socialist Green New Deal, it's a global Green New Deal. When I ran on 2020, we had $2 trillion over the 10-year budget for investing in the global South for renewable energy and economic development, which would improve, conditions in those societies from which people are fleeing. And instead of, sending, U.S. troops or intervening or covert action, in other words, instead of a military solution to these problems, we should be providing humanitarian solutions and spend that money. We would win a lot more friends than enemies by doing that. And instead, we're not. And so that's another thing. I mean, there won't be a debate on military spending, except in the one case of Ukraine. But that won't be about cutting overall military spending. And there'll be these people hypocritically saying, well, that money, we need it for housing or, securing the border or whatever they say, and they don't have any intention of spending it on that stuff. It's such a low level, and without a strong candidate on the left that can present an alternative, we're in a bad situation. But I think, Biden is moving to the right. He accepted that debt ceiling deal, which froze domestic social spending for 2 years. And now the, far right Republicans are using their leverage in that caucus to push for more, even at the point of shutting down the government. Now they don't even have a speaker, and they're kind of stuck, with their own mess. But, like climate issues, Biden has permitted more oil and gas drilling on public lands than Trump did over the same period. So it's what I'm saying is I'm not so worried about Biden's age and being a little slower than he used to be. I'm more worried about what he's actually doing. And he's moving to the right, hoping to get people that might otherwise vote for Trump, but they're not voting for Trump on policy. They're voting for Trump because they're just mad, or they blame immigrants and different minorities for problems those groups did cause. But they're mad, and Trump gives them a way of expressing that anger, but it's not constructive. So yeah, it's a bad dynamic,
Mm.
and
So,
it's just a shame that the left can't get its act together to, run a serious campaign, build a party. But that's what we need to do.
well, we have 13 months to do that, and I'm sure that in those 13 months, issues and will come up where I will give you a buzz again, and we could do another show. Would you like that?
Sure, I'm ready to talk about this stuff anytime.
Okay, great. You've been listening to Howie Hawkins. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. And if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Howie, thanks for taking the time to be on the show. And thank you for listening. Have a great day.